Hello everyone, this is Dr. Supriya Singh, Assistant Professor in the Department of English, Vasant Kanya Mahavidyalaya, affiliated to Banaras Hindu University. I welcome you to the fourth lecture of fourth week, that is the last week, of the course titled Understanding Deconstruction, a Critical Approach. And here the present lecture is titled A Deconstructive Study of the Movie All We Imagine as Light and a documentary, The Elephant Whisperer. Now, here let me tell you that these two movies I have chosen because both of them have got some or the other award. For instance, the Grand Prix Award is won by All We Imagine as Light, and the documentary, that is The Elephant Whisperer, has won Oscar in the category of short documentary. And this is going to be quite interesting because naturally, as compared to texts, students are more interested in movies. So let us start with the two movies, where we find that the two movies are quite different, but we are also going to compare and contrast between the two apart from doing a deconstructive study. So let's start. Now, I would like to begin with what are the similarities in the two. So, when we come to the theme of the two movies, we find that at initial level we have talked about space. So, space is something that is very significant in both the movies. In the very first one, that is All We Imagine as Light, we find that the space is quite congested. We have the congested city life of Mumbai, where the characters are unable to adjust themselves and they are facing crisis with this space. And we would be dealing further when we would deal the movie as individual. And this way we find that in contrast to this, where All We Imagine as Light is quite congested, on the other hand side we find that The Elephant Whisperer is quite open because it has ample space. We have large ample space of nature where we have large mountains, valleys, ground green grounds, and lush green, beautiful, pristine space. So as far as the space is concerned, one is quite congested and the other is quite pristine nature, open space. Now, then we see that there is idea of emotion. We find that both the movies are dealing with emotion, where the first movie deals with the emotion where every character uh, is entangled with some or the other emotion, and there is too much that is embedded within their psyche, within their heart, and they are unable to express it in the lack of a proper partner or a good friend. And even if they have good friend, there are certain crises that enable them to express themselves completely. When we come to the movie The Elephant Whisperer, we find that the characters express their emotions quite truly in a very raw manner without anything that is hidden in them. So on one hand side, the first movie is talking about the entangled emotions mixed with the suppressed psychological issues because of the outer surrounding that is congested. So the surrounding, the setting has much to do with the emotion, and the characters are dwelling between the outside and the inside emotions because the inside emotion is unable to get space in the outside world. Where when you come to whereas when you come to this particular movie, The Elephant Whisperer, here you will find that all the characters are quite open, raw, completely able to express their emotions for the others. And here you will find that they speak less, the dialogues are less, but the emotions comes out through their bodily activities, through their body language. Now the third idea is the idea of coexistence. Now here in the very first movie we find that the coexistence is there. The women's solidarity has been shown by Payal Kapadia, but apart from that solidarity, you will find that the coexistence is difficult in the outside world, because the women, they are working in a hospital, and it is their compulsion to adjust in the city life of Mumbai, where they are unable to get space for their words as well as um, for their existence. So the space constraint is not only in the outside world, rather the space constraint is also not able to, because it is not able to give them ample opportunity to express their psyche, to express their soul, to express their heart. So the coexistence is between the women, but they are unable to coexist with the compulsiveness of the job, the compulsiveness of the society, and it is quite difficult for them to survive in the private and the public space, because the two roles are quite different. However, when we come to The Elephant Whisperer, the documentary, we find that here the coexistence is a completely different sort of, because the people, the characters Bowman and Billy, they are a part of wider pristine nature. They do not consider themselves separate from nature, rather the nature is quite wide, and they are in good coexistence with the flora as well as the fauna of that wider open space. So we can call it that not just nature, rather the open space is there, which is in the lead character, and the human beings, the communities, the characters, even the protagonists, Bowman and Billy, they are the part of this open space, as Raghu and Amu, the two elephants, and as the various other species, as well as the floral, the lush green beauty that has been cinematographically presented in a very beautiful way. Now, coming to relationship, we find that here there is, in the very first movie, there are three lead roles, three female characters, and they are facing different sort of relationships in their social arena. While there you will find in The Elephant Whisperer, the relationship between the elephant and the characters, not just elephant and the characters, but the flora, fauna, and the human beings, that is the human and non-human, we can say, the relationship is quite healthy, and they are part and parcel of each other. So there is a symbiotic sort of relationship. So here also you will find somewhat symbiosis attempt is there, but it is not complete. However, when we would be coming to deal the movie individually, we would be able to understand it in much better way. Now, light, the last idea here is the light, and we find that the light has been used as a trace, the deconstructive notion of trace. Here you will find the apparent meaning of light, where Mumbai is a city of light, where everyone gets, it has a charismatic effect, and everyone gets attracted towards it because of the charm of light of the city, Mumbai. So here is completely artificial light and representing artificial lifestyle. Whereas when you come to The Elephant Whisperer, the light is a daylight, and the whole movie has been captured, the whole scenario has been captured, the whole cinema has been captured in the original light, and most of the part has been captured in the daylight without any artificiality. So the artificial light, and there is a binary in the two movie of the artificial light and the original light, and the artificial light is depicting the artificial lifestyle, where everything is quite, not original. So I'm going to deconstruct it again, because we cannot say that that is not original, rather we can say that it is original in that particular setup. So light is artificial in the first movie, whereas when we come to the second movie, we find that it is original, and it is depicting the raw kind of relationship, raw kind of setting, and raw kind of lifestyle. So this way, light is knowledge, light is something, and in both of them they have different sort of knowledge regarding life, and by the end of the movie, we come to understand different sorts of lifestyle. One is of Mumbai artificial, and the other is of the open space, raw, natural light. Now, coming to the next slide, let us continue with the first movie, that is All We Imagine as a Light. Here, let me tell you that All We Imagine as Light is a 2024 Indian drama film directed by Payal Kapadia, making fiction filmmaking particularly. The film has gathered international acclaim for its poetic storytelling and the vast ranging portrayal of women's lives in contemporary Mumbai. The movie achieved a historic milestone by becoming the first Indian film in 3 decades to compete in the main competition at the Cannes Film Festival. This movie was premiered on 23rd May 2024, and it received an 8-minute standing ovation. That is a big thing, particularly for India, because it is to be noticed that this particular movie won the Grand Prix award at the 77th Cannes Film Festival, marking it a significant achievement for Indian cinema and making it the first Indian film to receive this honor. Now, coming to the next slide, let us move to the storyline that we are going to deconstruct. So here we have a three women's story, particularly the three women's named Prabha, Anu, and Parvati. So Prabha, here we see this particular woman who is throughout consistent with a similar sort of static sort of facial expression. So here when I'm talking about facial expression of the character Prabha, we see that she keeps smiling, a small sort of smile always on her face, and the eyes seems to be tired. Now this particular facial expression is very much in line with the life that she was living, because she is a woman who is calm, settled, and who is tied to the invisible boundary of tradition and relationship. Let me tell you that she is a conservative sort of a woman, a traditional woman, where she has a husband, she is married, but the marital status is also not clear, and we can say that her marital status is very much like a trace. It can be considered as a trace here, because the status is not clear and it can be interpreted variously, and at various moments in the movie we find that she uses her status in different ways. For instance, in the very beginning, we find that she is quite attached to the knot of marriage, and she do not feel comfortable twice when she was offered a healthy relationship or friendship by Dr. Manoj, because she feels that her status is something that binds her, and therefore she cannot cross the limits. And in the next or the later phase of the movie, we also see that she met a stranger and she saved that particular stranger by giving CPR because he was not feeling well. He was drowned in the river, and he was saved by the villagers, and by giving CPR as a nurse, she saved that man. And this way, there also she is using her marital status as trace, where we can find that identity shift is something that is found in her personality, and she imagines as a wife of that stranger, because he was perhaps suffering from amnesia and he lost his memory, and people consider both as husband and wife, and therefore at least for some time she wanted to behave as a wife, and this gave her a good feeling. So here you will find that the marital status is a trace, and here she crosses the boundary, but only from inside and not from outside. Throughout the movie we find that from outside she is quite pure, and she maintains the pristineness of her sexuality. Now, as far as in the very beginning of this slide, we came across that she had static facial expression, let me tell you that this particular facial expression is now we can able to understand more, because from inside we find that she was always hollow, thinking about that whether she is married or not. She was throughout with this dilemma because her marital status never allowed her to cross the limit, and she was never married also. So there is a binary of married and unmarried, and she is in between the boundary of this two binary status. And when she behaves, or when she comes in contact with the stranger, she, at least for some time only, when acted as a wife, she explored a different world, so that after this we find her as a new Prabha, as a different Prabha, where she comes across the boundary of being married, and she allowed Anu, another character, to go for the love marriage. Now, coming to the character of Anu, we find that her character portrayal is again setting a binary, and we find that whereas Prabha was quite conservative, here she is quite modern, and therefore she herself says that she won't be able to marry a man whom she does not know. And through the story we come to know that she was in love with a boy called Shiaz. However, there are various layers of meanings that we find in this relationship, because they move about in these streets of Mumbai because of the space constraint, and they want to be intimate physically and sexually, but they were unable to do so because of the space constraint in Mumbai. So they were this particular couple is continuously struggling with the crisis of the space, that is quite contradictory in the Elephant Whisperer. So here we find that this particular couple shows how the urban space is quite congested, and people are unable to get proper space. However, when they were moving about in these streets and meeting strange peoples, listening to their strange kind of conversations in different languages, different regional languages even, we come to see that these streets are not just hollow presentation. Rather, apart from giving a view, giving a cinematographic view of Mumbai, they also gives us layers of meanings. So a street again is acting as a trace, where it is reflecting the layers of psychological ideas, thoughts, bubbling up of thoughts in the subconscious and unconscious of these two characters, because throughout they were under pressure, under family pressure as well as peer pressure. For instance, though we do not know much about the male character, when we come to Anu, we see that she was unable to share much with her mate, with her roommate Prabha, whom she considered as a guardian figure, because she was well aware of the conservative nature of Prabha. So the psyche, the unconscious, the subconscious of Anu has been depicted through the layers and the layers and layers of meanings that we find in Street. So her unconscious psychological moves is very much like the moves of the streets. Now, when we come to Parvati, we find that she dwells between centering and decentering of private space. So as we discussed that Mumbai has crisis of space, we find that she had a space, she had a house of her own, but because of the legal documents of that house, she had to move, she had to shift, and even the lawyer was unable to save her, because though she was the owner of the house, but she does not have the legal documents. And this way, her particular character is a kind of a questioning upon the fixity of space, and we come to understand that there is no fixed center, no fixed space, no fixed identity, and she moves from Mumbai to her village house in order to have a settled life. However, she comes to understand that that house is not completely her own, because she has to work for herself, she has to earn, and therefore she further shifted to a hostel. So this way, no space, whether her own house or the rented house, no space, or even the house that has been given to her husband by compensation, none of the house was owned, and therefore it questions the identity, the settled status of people. And this way, space also becomes a trace in the whole movie. Now, this way, we find that Kapadia's film often leans into silence, long takes, and quiet gestures. There are various absences and presences, and most of the time we find that presence is not that important as absence. So those moments are more powerful where nothing has been said, where silence is pervades. Thus, more than dialogues, we can rely on aporias for the wider understanding of the narrative. And meaning is made in glances, routines, rituals. These are certain cinematographic elements which are more significant than the conversations or the dialogues. So the setting is as powerful as the silences. And silences in language here does not say that they had nothing to tell, but they had too much inside themselves. So, especially when we are talking about the silences of the women lives, where speech is often suppressed or ignored. And this way, we find that ultimately in this particular movie, we come open endedly without any dramatic resolution. And we find that in life, in the modern life, we are more able to relate it with post-structuralist idea that no final justice is there, no final meaning is there in life. And this way, without any dramatic resolution, the movie ends in a meditative note where nothing comes out but only hope, expectations, and so on. And in this way, when we come to the deconstructionist move of the story, we find that the lack of closure is key. It refuses the comfort of finality, keeping the contradictions alive. The Elephant Whisperers is a 41 minutes Indian short documentary of 2022. It was originally written and set in Tamil with subtitles, directed by Karthiki Gonzalez and produced by Guneet Monga under the banner of Sekhya Entertainment. It gained worldwide attention for its touching portrayal of human-animal bonds and made history by winning the Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Film in 2023, the first ever Oscar for an Indian production in that category. Now, coming to a small short summary of the movie, let me tell you that the documentary particularly follows an indigenous couple where we have Bowman and Belly, who are caretakers of an orphaned baby elephant named Raghu. And the film exposes the emotional and physical labor that they invest in nurturing this young elephant, creating a profound relationship rooted in trust and affection. Now, this particular documentary follows, they take care of Raghu, the elephant, in such a manner that you won't find any difference between human and post-human. Till now, regarding post-human, let me tell you that when I'm talking about post-human, I am talking about both flora, fauna, various species of nature, and the nature in background itself. So till now, we seen that all the movies or all these stories, all the narratives were traditionally woven in the idea where human beings were in the center and the animals were being shown from the lens of the human beings. So this way they were always secondary, but here we find that in this particular movie they are, sharing similar sort of relationship, similar sort of emotional attachment with each other, and the emotions of both human and non-human, that is animal, has been captured. And this way we find that the binary gets dismantled, the human oblique non-human or animal binary has been dismantled in this whole movie. Even nature plays significantly because of the large, pristine, lush green nature has been presented before us with all the huge spiritual boundaries, that cannot be crossed, or the limits that cannot be understood by human beings. At one point of time, we come to know that Billy's first husband was killed by a tiger, and we also come to know that Bowman is now no more keeping an elephant, a huge elephant, with him, because earlier he was got hurt from one of a big elephant, and therefore he is now taking care only of baby elephants. Now this way we come to find that though they are being harmed and hurt by the animals, but this does not ever distance them. So this binary is nowhere found in this particular movie. There is no barrier, no separation, or no distancing. Now, apart from this, we find that there is a mother son relationship between Belly and Raghu. So, this way, we find that these two characters, Belly, though a human, and Raghu, though an animal, they share similar sort of emotions, and the shift of identity can be seen. They are crisscrossing their category in order to be one and showing a complete strong bond with each other. So this mother son relationship is actually an example of identity shift, where there is no barrier between animal and human. Now Billy in particular emerges as a mother figure who is quite loving and devoted to the elephant. And apart from that, we also find that the documentary gently points out how this work, and how all the women in the community, like Belly, they take care of the animals, and they develop a motherly affection for them. Now this way we find that we are not just talking of the emotions of the women, rather we find that these indigenous communities are rarely rewarded or recognized for this kind of pristine relationship with animals. Now, apart from this, we find that here a greater idea of Hindu philosophy gets resonant with this movie, where we find one soul in man, nature, and divine. So, this is an idea where we find that there is no bifurcation in man, nature, and divine, because particularly we see that there is a moment when all the elephants of the area are taken to get the blessings of Lord Ganesha. So here Lord Ganesha is also a part of their, a wider ecological or a wider life existence. And this way we find that they had one soul, and that is the soul with love and affection for each other, and that incorporates man, nature, divine, and this way they are proving Hindu philosophy to be true with their indigenous identity. However, at a certain point, we find that there is human interference in changing the non human world, and that is why we find that the bell has been tied by Bowman around the neck of Raghu, so that she could be taken as or tamed as a part of human. So here it is, at least when we are doing a deconstructive study, we should also see the other part, the other angle, and we find that perhaps because of too much emotionally connected with an animal, he wanted to tame it, and bell is the symbol of that. Now apart from that, we also find that though they had wonderful relationship amongst each other, but bureaucratic structure comes up to play a powerful role, and ultimately they separate Raghu from the couple. And this way we find that there is no control over emotion, there is no control over love and affection if the power plays significantly. So power role also can be understood or can be seen here. This way we find that in both the movies, though they are quite contradictory to each other, but we can understand, while doing a deconstructive study of the two movies, we can understand that always there is binary that plays significantly. And as Claude Lévi-Strauss has understood the concept of binary in the universe, and all human beings are seeing things in the contrasting pairs, so everywhere this binary works. And apart from this, the idea of trace plays significantly, because everywhere we find that meanings are disseminated and dispersed. And therefore, this way we can go with the application of deconstruction not only in novels, short stories, rather we can go with movies, statements, and anywhere. Thank you.